The Cannonball Run became famous for its breathtaking car chases and its star-studded cast. On screen, what the audience witnessed was sheer madness, journeys that defied logic but remained irresistibly entertaining. Yet beneath that comedic surface lay a behind-the-scenes story just as thrilling. The script was inspired by an actual illegal race, a tragic accident struck on set, and at times the actors had no idea what they were about to perform. Not only that, but the crew was repeatedly visited by the police for causing unexpected chaos. And if you think that alone sounds insane enough, then get ready. Because here are 20 facts about the Cannonball Run you've likely never heard before. 1. Behind the movie was an illegal race. Few realise that before becoming a globally famous comedy, the Cannonball Run was originally rooted in a dangerous, unlawful race. In 1971, journalist Brock Yates and racer Dan Gurney boldly drove a modified Dodge van, blasting from New York to Los Angeles in just 35 hours and 54 minutes, entirely without a permit. They named this reckless challenge the Cannonball Baker Sea to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash, as a tribute to legendary driver Erwin Cannonball Baker. But more than that, it was Yates's quiet protest against the rigid government speed regulations. And the madness didn't stop there. Between 1971 and 1979, 5 such illegal races were held, with daredevil drivers using every kind of vehicle imaginable, from flashy Ferraris to ambulances and even funeral hearses. They disguised themselves, they risked everything, and they accepted the possibility of prison. Out of this chaos, Yates joined forces with director Hal Needham to turn the crazy race into a movie. The Cannonball Run was not merely inspired by the race, it was its cinematic reincarnation, only with Hollywood stars replacing the real-life daredevils. Yet behind that playful, laughter-filled transformation, a horrifying tragedy truly occurred during filming, one that haunted the crew for years afterward. 3. The 2 main actors were constantly drunk, and the director encouraged it. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. weren't just pretending to be fake priests on screen. They truly lived the role with real alcohol and real drunkenness. They showed up late, forgot their lines, and improvised almost every scene. And yet, in some bizarre twist of fate, it all worked. Director Hal Needham never tried to stop them. In fact, he embraced the chaos. At one point, Sammy delivered a prayer so slurred it had to be re-recorded. Dean simply laughed, raised his glass, and poured another drink. This wasn't acting. This was the raw spirit of the Rat Pack. Their disorder injected a wild spontaneity, making the scenes funny in the most natural way possible. But the madness didn't stay on the ground. In one sequence meant only as light-hearted fun, the crew decided to push the limits by putting a machine no one expected into the sky. 2. The accident in the movie was real, and it was terrifying. Behind the high-speed chases of the Cannonball Run lies a tragic event. During a dangerous stunt sequence, an Aston Martin was driven into a pre-arranged crash scene. But one crucial detail was ignored. The seatbelt was not fastened. The person sitting in the car was stuntwoman Heidi von Beltz. When the car smashed directly into a truck, both the vehicle and Heidi were thrown violently out. She was left permanently paralysed after that horrifying crash. The accident ignited a wave of outrage across Hollywood's stunt community. In its aftermath, the Directors Guild enforced a ban on altering stunt sequences on set and made it mandatory that seatbelts be fastened in every vehicle. Although the film delivered plenty of laughs, this incident carved a lasting scar and reshaped the way action movies were produced for decades afterward. But the chaos behind the Cannonball Run didn't end there. Another bizarre truth, almost unbelievable, still waits to be uncovered. And it will surely shock you. 4. The movie was investigated by the FAA because of a jet plane. You might think the scene of the Learjet skimming so close to the ground with engines roaring was just special effects. Wrong. It was a real stunt. No models, no studio tricks. A genuine Learjet screamed through narrow passages, its engines thundering like the pits of hell. Even more reckless, the entire sequence was shot without a single permit from the FAA. The crew had only one chance to capture it, and they took it, but afterward, trouble came crashing in. The FAA didn't view it as a stunt, they called it a crime. An investigation followed, and director Hal Needham had to scramble to avoid arrest. In the Cannonball Run, much of what you see is fake, but that jet was real. And so was the looming fear of prison for filming such a dangerous scene illegally. And yet, if you think the jet stunt was the peak of recklessness, brace yourself, because the disaster in Las Vegas pushed the chaos to an entirely new level. 5. The crew was once arrested by the Las Vegas police. One of the boldest sequences in the Cannonball Run was shot right in the heart of Las Vegas. The filmmakers staged a dramatic fake chase, tires screeching on the pavement, sirens blaring, fake gunfire echoing. Cameras rolled, stuntmen performed, every second carefully timed. But there was one huge problem. They had no permit whatsoever. And then, reality collided with fiction. Real police officers stormed in, believing they were witnessing an actual riot. Stunt actors froze, others panicked and ran. Someone shouted, "Cut!" but it was already too late. After a tense confrontation, the entire crew was released with a stern warning. The only one delighted was director Hal Needham, because amid the chaos, he had captured the perfect scene. But the strangest part was this. In a film filled with accidents, disorder, and broken rules, there was one star who joined only to have fun. Ironically, that carefree attitude turned him into an irreplaceable icon. 6. Burt Reynolds joined just for fun, but became a legend. At that time, Burt Reynolds was already a living legend, far too famous to bother taking on another role. He didn't need to make more films, and the offers kept flooding in. Yet when his close friend Hal Needham asked, Reynolds agreed. Partly for friendship, partly for the enormous paycheck that was impossible to ignore. Still, Reynolds later bluntly called it one of the worst decisions of my career. He accepted the Cannonball Run purely for fun, not for art, not for the script, not even for the challenge. Reynolds barely rehearsed, rarely checked the dailies, and treated the whole project like a lavish vacation caught on camera. When the final cut was released, Reynolds despised it. He saw it as shallow, pointless, and overblown. But ironically, audiences adored it. The film exploded at the box office, becoming an unexpected hit. And even more surprising, the Cannonball Run didn't just shine thanks to Hollywood's biggest names. There was also a mysterious face from Asia, virtually unknown to American audiences at the time, who stunned everyone with just a few minutes on screen. 7. Jackie Chan appeared as an action superstar. In the Cannonball Run, Jackie Chan stunned the set by hanging upside down on walls, leaping through windows, and delivering punches so fast they left the editing team astonished. Yet many of those breathtaking sequences were cut. Not because they were bad, but because they were considered too intense for a comedy film. American censors had no idea how to handle a fighter who moved like the wind in the middle of a car chase comedy. Although disappointed that he couldn't fully display his abilities, it was precisely those deleted scenes that made American audiences notice this Asian star for the very first time. From then on, Jackie Chan was no longer just a background performer with a few fleeting moments. He became a leading star in countless future films. But perhaps the most shocking part of the Cannonball Run was not the punches, the stunts, or even the roaring jet plane. It was a truth almost impossible to believe. Throughout the filming, the crew practically lacked the one thing every movie is supposed to have. 8. The script simply didn't exist in the Cannonball Run. Have you ever wondered what gave the film its chaotic yet irresistible charm? The secret lies here. There was almost no script. Director Hal Needham preferred to capture real stunts, avoided CGI altogether, and deliberately created disarray so everything would feel authentic. Many scenes were written right on the back of a truck. Each day, the actors arrived on set with no idea what they were about to do. Needham ran the movie like a live stunt performance, fast, impulsive, and wildly spontaneous. The stars themselves confirmed this. Farrah Fawcett admitted she had never seen a complete script. Dom DeLuise proudly claimed he invented half of his lines. And Dean Martin, he simply said whatever came into his head. No plan, no blueprint, just one scene tumbling into the next. And somehow, this whirlwind of improvisation gave birth to a cinematic classic. But if you think the improvisation ended with the actors or the director, think again. Because the Cannonball Run also featured another legendary figure you would never expect. 9. Brock Yates wasn't acting. He was reliving his own life. When audiences watched the Cannonball Run, few realised that the man in sunglasses holding a clipboard at the starting line wasn't just an extra, but Brock Yates himself, the creator of both the race and the film. The calm demeanour he showed on screen was only a facade. In truth, Yates was reliving his own madness. Back in 1971, he had driven an old Dodge ambulance across America in an illegal race. His wife posed as the patient, while his teammate disguised as medical staff. Yates's appearance in the film was nothing short of extraordinary. Every chaotic scene, every line of dialogue was born from his real experience. It was a once-in-history moment in Hollywood, where the man who created the legend stepped directly into his own legend. But it wasn't only people who carried their past into the movie. Even a seemingly harmless vehicle once served as an accomplice in unlawful escapades no one could have imagined. 10. The ambulance in the film once took part in real illegal runs. The ambulance in the Cannonball Run was not a prop, but the real thing. A machine that had once broken laws, crossed states, and fooled police in real life. In 1979, Brock Yates and director Hal Needham, the very fathers of the Cannonball race, joined one of its final illegal runs. Instead of flashy sports cars, they chose a 1978 Dodge Tradesman ambulance. The plan was bold in its simplicity. Who would dare stop an ambulance carrying a dying patient? And the trick worked. They raced from New York almost all the way to California until the engine exploded near Palm Springs, forcing their reckless journey to end on the back of a tow truck. Years later, that very ambulance was brought onto the film set, cleaned up, and turned into the vehicle of J.J. McClure, played by Burt Reynolds. On screen, it looked comical, but beneath its hood lay the legend of pure law-defying recklessness. But it wasn't only vehicles that made the production so chaotic. One of the biggest stars of the era stepped into the project under bizarre circumstances. He didn't even know what he was filming. 11. The leading actress didn't even know what kind of film she was in. When Farrah Fawcett accepted the role of Pamela Glover in the Cannonball Run, she believed she was joining a romantic action movie. She prepared carefully, studying her lines, analysing her character's psychology, even planning outfits to reflect subtle emotions. But all her expectations collapsed the moment she stepped onto the set. In front of her was Dean Martin dressed as a priest, staggering and joking about communion wine in a drunken state. That was when Fawcett realised she had been completely mistaken. It wasn't until she watched the finished film with the audience that she truly understood. The scenes she performed with full seriousness and emotion had the theatre bursting into laughter. Ironically, her confusion added a rare authenticity, making her performance one of the most unique highlights in the entire movie. But the surprises behind the scenes didn't stop there. One of the funniest roles in the film almost belonged to someone completely different. 12. The talkative priest role almost didn't belong to Sammy Davis Jr. Few know that the drunken priest Maurice Fenderbaum, a role forever tied to Sammy Davis Jr., was originally not meant for him at all. The part was first written for comedy legend Don Rickles, master of sharp, biting punchlines. He agreed to join and was ready to perform, but vanished at the last minute. The reason remains uncertain. Some claim scheduling conflicts, others whisper creative disputes. When director Hal Needham and the producers were cornered, Sammy Davis Jr. stepped in with supreme confidence. With his stage instincts, he breathed life into the character. The mix of guilt, irreverence, and faux holiness in his performance meshed perfectly with Dean Martin's slurred lines. What began as a casting failure turned into a stroke of fortune, helping cement the movie's success. And sometimes, what makes a role immortal has nothing to do with the script or acting technique, but with those unplanned mistakes that happen on set. 13. Dom DeLuise couldn't stop laughing, and that became unforgettable. Who would have thought that a supporting role could become the heart of the film? Dom DeLuise, as Captain Chaos, achieved this not through scripted lines, but through laughter. He constantly burst out laughing, breaking scenes apart, leaving Burt Reynolds helpless. At first, director Hal Needham tried to reshoot, but soon realised Dom's uncontrollable laughter was far funnier than any line written on paper. So he kept it all. And when the movie premiered, audiences saw the authenticity. It wasn't acting, it was pure joy bursting through. That unplanned, uncontrollable spontaneity made Captain Chaos a highlight, giving the Cannonball run a unique flavour. But if you think the quirky twist stopped behind the scenes, you'll be even more surprised to learn that an Asian star once faced bitter frustration in his very first Hollywood introduction. 14. Jackie Chan was introduced as Japanese. In the film, Jackie Chan played a racer with masterful martial arts skills and high-tech gadgets. Yet the shocking detail was that his character was introduced as Japanese. For a Chinese actor like Jackie Chan, this mistake was not only careless, but also disrespectful. Still, he remained professional, performing all his stunts himself and delivering humorous, precise moments that charmed the audience. At that time, Jackie Chan was just taking his first steps into Hollywood. But this initial slight became the driving force that pushed him to prove his true worth and rise to become one of the greatest action stars in the world. Yet the Cannonball run didn't just surprise audiences with martial arts stars. A global cinema icon also appeared in the film, in a way no one could have ever imagined. 15. James Bond appeared in the film, but only as an imitation. Have you ever wondered what would happen if James Bond stopped being serious? The Cannonball run answered that question in the most playful way by casting Roger Moore, the very face of 007, in the movie. Moore didn't play James Bond, but instead a character named Seymour Goldfarb Jr., a wealthy man convinced that he was the famous spy. He drove an Aston Martin DB5, wore sharp suits, and spouted classic Bond lines to the point of parody. While Moore thoroughly enjoyed the self-mockery, the official Bond producers were furious. They considered it an insult and immediately inserted a new clause into the contract, prohibiting all future Bond actors from parodying the character in other films. Thus, the Cannonball run became the last film where an actual Bond actor was allowed to openly lampoon 007. In a movie overflowing with absurdity, even James Bond couldn't escape the comedy. But behind the bursts of laughter in theatres, a storm of backlash was brewing. The more successful the film became, the harsher the criticism grew. 16. Huge box office success, but mercilessly attacked by critics. With a worldwide gross surpassing $160 million, the Cannonball run quickly became one of the highest-grossing comedies of 1981, a staggering figure compared to its modest $18 million budget. It ranked 6th on the year's box office chart, outshining many big-budget blockbusters. Yet behind that financial triumph was a torrent of scorn from critics. Legendary reviewer Roger Ebert handed it a mere half-star, calling the movie a total abandonment of artistic responsibility at the lowest possible level of ambition. In other words, even its failure wasn't properly executed. Farrah Fawcett, once adored by audiences, was even nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award for her role. Although she didn't win, losing out to Diana Scarwid in Mommie Dearest hardly softened the blow. Ironically, Fawcett had also been called out the year before for her controversial performance in Saturn III. And yet, despite being savaged by critics, the film's influence spread in ways no one could have anticipated. 17. The Cannonball Run inspired a legendary video game. What seemed like nothing more than a wild comedy ended up sparking an immortal masterpiece. In 1986, Japanese game designer Yu Suzuki, you mistakenly wrote Yuzuki, watched the Cannonball Run and saw beyond speeding cars. He felt the freedom, the endless road, and the thrill of breaking every limit. From that, Outrun was born, a game that wasn't just about racing, but about a dream behind the wheel. Players weren't chasing trophies or hunting rivals, they were searching for liberation. No laps, no enemies, just a blazing red Ferrari Testarossa, a beautiful girl beside you, and a highway stretching into infinity. If you've ever gripped the plastic steering wheel, heard the upbeat soundtrack, and driven through Outrun, you know. The game needed no instructions, it only needed you to drive. And it all began with a comedy film that never stopped moving. But not every memorable moment belonged to the stars. Sometimes, the one who surprised the crew the most was a stuntman who showed up by chance. 18. A stuntman looked so much like Burt Reynolds, no one could tell the difference. In one scene, a policeman stops a speeding Lamborghini. At first glance, nothing unusual, until you freeze the frame and realise that cop looks exactly like Burt Reynolds. But the truth is, it wasn't him at all. The man was Roy Tatum, a veteran stunt performer. He resembled Burt so closely that even the cast occasionally couldn't tell them apart. Initially, Tatum was only visiting an old friend on set, but when a crew member noticed the uncanny likeness, he blurted out, "Why don't we just put him in the movie?" And so, Roy Tatum donned a police uniform, stepped into the scene, and became a playful Easter egg that only the sharpest viewers would catch. At one point during a break, a producer even walked up to Tatum and casually handed him the entire outline for the next sequence, convinced he was speaking to Burt Reynolds himself. Tatum simply smiled, nodded, and played the part of the stand-in flawlessly. But the surprises didn't end there, because the film's legendary four-wheeled machine still held secrets no one could have expected. 19. The mystery behind the legendary Ferrari 308 GTS. Few realised that the red Ferrari 308 GTS, driven by Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. in the Cannonball Run, wasn't a studio prop at all. It was the personal car of director Hal Needham. As a former stuntman, Needham trusted both his own instincts and the skills of his actors, handing over the keys without hesitation. No insurance, no backup car, just a simple warning: don't wreck it. But the crew almost did. Tyres were burned, doors scratched, and in one sequence the Ferrari came within mere centimetres of a guardrail. Still, Needham never stepped in. To him, the Cannonball Run wasn't about pretending to race, it was about truly living it. In a film where reality and chaos blended seamlessly, the director's gamble with his own prized car became the most authentic symbol of its reckless spirit. And if you think the daring stopped within the boundaries of the movie, you're mistaken. Because while filming was still underway, a shocking decision from the producers left everyone stunned. 20. Part 1 wasn't even finished, but Part 2 was already ordered. The Cannonball Run was only halfway through filming when shocking news came. The sequel was practically greenlit on the spot. One executive was even said to have exclaimed, "We've got a hit on our hands." No one cared about how the script would end, how the editing would look, or whether the effects would be polished. What they saw was enough: a glittering cast, addictive, ridiculous stunts, and a formula the box office couldn't resist. Thus, The Cannonball Run 2 was approved while the first film hadn't even wrapped. No one worried about an unfinished plot, messy sound, or incomplete sequences. All the studio needed to see was the money flowing toward them like a storm. The Cannonball Run roared into theatres in a frenzy. And in that race, nobody asked if the car would win. As long as it kept running, kept roaring, and kept throwing money into their pockets with every spin of its wheels. Who would have guessed that behind a seemingly nonsensical car chase comedy lay a treasure trove of behind-the-scenes tales too wild to believe? Among all the secrets revealed, which one shocked you the most? Leave your thoughts below and don't forget to hit follow so you can keep uncovering more untold mysteries of Hollywood with us.